Welcome to the Depot Sports Chat. I'm sports editor Drew Rubenstein, and with me today is Ed Owens, our WVU football beat reporter. And Ed, we're entering the end of fall camp. WVU's got 2 days left before they'll break and go into the school version of the schedule where they won't have two-a-days anymore and practicing after classes and things like that. But the media has been able to see two, what I would call more important versions of practice, where we've actually seen the first team offense go up against the first team defense, or at least what we think is the first team offense. In both of those situations, Clint Trickett started at quarterback. How much should we read into that fact?
I think you should read into it a lot. I know the first time out, all eyes were on it, and I think they made a statement by sending out Trickett earlier on Monday's practice. They did it again on Thursday in the final session that we were able to see. And not only did Trickett go out first, he took reps with the first team, followed by Paul Millard with the second team. Trickett came back out again with the first team, followed by Ford Childress with the second team. So not only is he getting twice the reps, he's out there working with the first unit.
And I know they've been saying that they're going back and forth 50-50. That said, with all the quarterbacks, and they've been splitting across the days. That said, Dana Holgerson and Shannon Dawson, the offensive coordinator, both said by tomorrow, Saturday, they plan to have the starter in mind. Do you think they know at this point who that is?
I do. I do think they know. I think they will be going with Trickett. I mean, that's my personal opinion there. And having a chance to talk to Shannon today, he wouldn't confirm it, and he did still say that there's 2 days left and that they were going to use those to fully evaluate. They weren't going to make any decisions until after Saturday's practice. But I do think that they have a pretty good handle on where they're going.
I guess regardless of who the quarterback may be, and at this point it seems like Trickett has the upper hand, but we'll see. Maybe they're holding an ace up their sleeve. But how much of the offense would actually change if, depending on the quarterback? Is it pretty much going to be the same thing, whether it's Trickett or Millard or Childress, or does it change depending on who it is?
One thing Shannon and Dana have both said multiple times is that the offense doesn't really change. The plays stay the same. They just kind of adjust the sets that they can run it out of, the formations that they run it out of. So I don't know that you'll see a dramatically different offense regardless of which quarterback is in there. And another thing Shannon had mentioned was that all of them are relatively equal right now in terms of their proficiency in the offense. So I don't know that there's really one having a significant edge. I think Trickett just has more upside.
Kind of looking at the rest of the offense, Charles Sims seems to be a guy who's impressed throughout fall camp. Talking to the Coach Sider, the running backs coach, and Shannon Dawson, they kind of both are glowing in the remarks of Charles. They seem to really like what this guy can do, not only out of the backfield but also out wide. I think he's a guy that kind of comes to mind, but just from talking to coaches, are there other standouts from fall camp, guys that you would say this guy definitely had a good fall camp and made a statement?
I think Kevin White impressed a lot of people out at wide receiver. Coming in from junior college, and they weren't really sure what to expect out of him. He really kind of hit the ground running and has grown very comfortable in the offense. Kind of tied into Kevin White, he did have a shoulder problem and missed a few days of practice. And while he was out, KJ Myers stepped in, and Dana said he was really impressed with what Myers did. So I think they kind of found two wide receivers on the outside that they really do feel like can come in and contribute for him.
On the defensive side, what about on the defensive side? I know cornerback, that might be the place that seems to stand out the most, just because I think going into fall camp you would assume that, hey, the one senior starter, returning starter, Broderick Jenkins, would be there, but in fact, safety turned cornerback Travis Bell has been there, at least in the portions that we've seen, joined by Ishmael Banks.
Yes.
Are those the two guys that have stood out on the defensive side, or are there any other linebackers or anybody else that you think's been impressive?
I think definitely, I think the corners have been kind of a surprise, and like you said, you would have thought that Broad would have come in and gotten that starting job. To have somebody else come in with no real starting experience between Bell, converted safety, and Ishmael Banks, who's dealt with injuries throughout his career, to be able to have them both bump Broderick out of the way, I think says a lot about what the coaches think about him. Particularly on the defensive line, though, I think Eric Kinsey, another kid, he was a freshman last year, not a ton of experience, but he's in the starting lineup as of right now. He started both of the days that we were able to go to practice alongside Shaq Rowell and Will Clark. So I think for them to be able to put a sophomore in there starting on the defensive line, it just really says that they're thinking a lot about him right now.
And last little subject here on the offensive line. You have two returning starters at tackle with Quentin Spain and Curtis Fight. The interior of the offensive line, it seems like they know the guys that they want at the two guard positions in center. But regardless of who they actually end up choosing, it's going to be guys with no collegiate experience. in the Big 12 especially, how big of a deal is that to have the interior of your offensive line having no experience?
And I think it was Coach Crook who actually said it to you, was that he'd be more concerned if they didn't have the experience on the outside than the inside. You can kind of, you really want those two tackles to be able to be your experienced guys and kind of know what's going on. It will affect them. I mean, I think anytime you have inexperience anywhere, especially so much of it in a concentrated area as they do. But as Shannon mentioned today and in our last round of interviews, he's really kind of been happy with how everything's been going and said it's kind of just a matter of time before they get that communication together and can gel a little bit better.
All right, Ed, thanks for joining us, and please continue to check thedpost.com for all the latest sports videos. Thanks for joining us today.